At midnight, Linda Whitaker woke up to the cold glow of her phone on the nightstand. For a few seconds, she just stared at it. That little rectangle of light had become something she hated. Because lately, nothing good came from Paul's phone after dark. Then the screen lit again. Paul had finally texted, "I'll be late. Don't wait up." Linda read it once, then again. She did not answer. Not because she believed him. She did not. Not anymore. She stayed quiet because she had seen that sentence too many times, for months. Late had meant silence. Work had meant excuses. Tired had meant, "Don't ask me anything." And "don't wait up" had started to sound less like a husband being considerate and more like a man warning his wife not to look too closely. So Linda placed the phone back on the nightstand and lay there in the dark. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Really. That kind of quiet a home gets when one person is sleeping, one person is lying, and the truth is somewhere outside in the cold. Then, at 4:03 a.m., the second message came. "Something came up. We'll explain everything tomorrow." Linda sat up slowly. She read the message again. Then she read one word again. "We." Not I. Not my boss. Not the client. Not the team. We. That one careless word did what months of excuses had failed to do. It brought another person into the room. Not physically. Not yet. But enough. Enough for Linda to stop pretending the empty side of the bed was just part of Paul's job. If stories about betrayal, divorce, custody battles, and quiet justice speak to you, subscribe and stay with this one. Because sometimes a marriage does not end with screaming. Sometimes it ends with one word sent by mistake. Linda held the phone in both hands. Her thumbs stayed still for a moment. Then she typed back, "Stay with her. You're single now." No paragraph. No begging. No question mark. Just one sentence. Clean, cold, and long overdue. After she hit send, she did not cry right away. That surprised her. She just sat there in the dark, breathing slowly, feeling the weight of what she had done. Paul had always thought Linda needed proof before she would speak. What he never understood was that a woman can collect proof long before she says a word. Linda Whitaker was 51 years old, and she lived in a quiet Ohio suburb where people waved from their driveways and pretended they did not see more than they should. She was not a dramatic woman, never had been. She did not scream in parking lots. She did not throw plates. She did not make private pain into a public performance. Linda was the kind of woman who remembered her daughter's dental appointments without checking twice. She paid the bills before the due date. She kept receipts in a kitchen drawer. She knew when the laundry detergent was low, when the tires needed air, and exactly what was missing from the refrigerator. That was who she had always been. Steady, dependable, useful. The kind of woman people lean on so often they forget she has weight on her too. She and Paul had been married for 23 years. In the beginning, their life was ordinary in a way that felt safe. A small house, 2 car loans, cheap summer vacations, one daughter. Dinners after work, eaten at the kitchen table, while both of them were too tired to talk much, but still glad to be in the same room. Paul used to call if he was running late. He used to fix loose cabinet handles without making a speech about it. He used to remember Linda's birthday before any app reminded him. And for a long time, Linda believed that was love. Maybe it was. Maybe, for a while, Paul had been the man he looked like. But in the last few years, something in him shifted. Not fast. That would have been easier to see. A sudden change gives a woman something to point at. A slow change makes her question whether she is imagining it. Paul got promoted. He started traveling more. He bought nicer shirts. He wore expensive cologne while still complaining about the price of groceries. He checked his phone more often. He checked Linda less. At first, she told herself it was nothing. Men in their 50s sometimes want to feel younger, sharper, more important. Maybe Paul liked being noticed at work. Maybe the promotion had gone to his head a little. Maybe she was being unfair. So Linda gave him grace. That was her nature. And Paul used that grace like a hiding place. Their daughter Emily noticed too. She was 16, which is old enough to understand when a house stops feeling honest, but still young enough to wish adults would stop lying about it. Paul missed dinner first, then a school meeting, then one of Emily's performances where Linda sat beside an empty chair and watched her daughter glance toward the door until she finally stopped looking. Whenever Emily asked where he was, Paul gave the same soft little excuse. Dad's just busy. You'll understand when you're older. Linda hated that sentence. It made disappointment sound like maturity. It made absence sound like responsibility. And it told Emily that wanting her father to show up was somehow childish. Still, Linda tried to keep the peace. She did not want every night to become an interrogation. She did not want to stand in the kitchen with her arms folded, asking where he had been, while Emily pretended not to listen from the hallway. And she did not want to become the wife men love to dismiss. Jealous. Insecure. Paranoid. Crazy. All for asking one simple question. Paul knew that. He knew Linda hated conflict. He knew she would rather swallow doubt than poison the room with it. And little by little, he used her calmness as cover. The first red flags were small enough to explain away. Client dinners that ran past midnight, his phone face down on the table, a new laptop password, cash withdrawals he forgot to mention, receipts from places Linda had never been. One night, when he came home close to 1 a.m, Linda asked him where dinner had been. She asked softly. No accusation, no raised voice, just a question. Paul sighed like she had placed a heavy box on his chest. Linda, please, don't start. That became his favorite kind of answer. Not a fact. Not an explanation. A warning. Another week, Linda saw a strange charge on their joint credit card. A restaurant across town. Not expensive enough to prove anything. Just strange enough to bother her. Paul barely looked at the statement. You're looking for problems because you're bored. When she asked why he had been pulling more cash from the account, he gave her that tired little smile. The one that made her feel foolish before he even opened his mouth. You've always been paranoid about money. That was when the betrayal became colder than cheating. Because Paul was not just hiding things. He was teaching Linda to distrust herself. If she asked why his location was off, his battery had died. If she asked why he smelled like hotel soap, she was imagining things. If she asked why he missed dinner again, she was making his stress about herself. And when none of that worked, he used the sentence that shut the whole room down. This is why I don't talk to you anymore. You turned everything into an accusation. So Linda stopped asking, but she did not stop noticing. There is a difference. She started writing things down. Dates, times, charges, missed events. Nights Paul said he was with clients. Nights Emily went quiet because her father forgot again. At first, Linda did not know what she was building. She only knew she needed something more solid than a feeling. Because a liar can argue with a wife, he has a harder time arguing with paper. And one Thursday night, paper finally showed up. Paul had tossed his navy sport coat over the washing machine. He never did that. Usually, he checked the pockets first. Linda picked it up and felt something stiff inside the lining. At first, she thought it was a parking ticket. It was not. It was a hotel receipt, a boutique hotel 38 minutes from their house. Not a place someone accidentally passed through. Not a place a man stopped because work ran late. The date matched the night Paul said he had a client dinner. The bill showed 2 glasses of wine. Dinner for 2. Overnight parking. 1 room. Linda stood in the laundry room with the receipt in her hand while the dryer clicked behind her. For a moment, she felt nothing. Not anger, not panic. Just a quiet, ugly confirmation. Like part of her had been waiting for the world to stop telling her she was wrong. She did not run upstairs. She did not wake Paul. She did not throw the paper in his face and beg for an explanation he would only twist. She walked to the small printer by the desk. She scanned the receipt twice. Then she saved it in a folder named Taxes 2026. Boring names survive. Boring names do not attract attention. After that, she opened their joint credit card account. Now the small charges looked different. A restaurant near the hotel. A gas station on the same road. A flower shop. A jewelry store. Nothing huge. That was the clever part. Big theft screams. Small betrayal blends into a marriage. Then Linda saw the recurring payment. Same date every month. Same amount. Same vague description. County support processing. She stared at it for a long time. 14 months. More than $18,000 from their joint account. Linda did not know yet that it was connected to Vanessa Reed. She did not know about the little boy. She did not know Paul had been using family money to support another life while still eating dinner in hers. But she knew one thing. That money was not for her family. That night, Paul came home at 1:20 a.m. He moved quietly through the house, smelling like cold air and hotel soap. Linda kept her eyes closed. Paul leaned down and kissed her forehead, like he was still a faithful husband coming home late from work. That almost made her sick. Because a guilty man can still perform tenderness. That is what makes betrayal so insulting. It borrows the gestures of love and uses them as camouflage. Linda waited until he went into the bathroom. Then she opened her eyes. She knew exactly what she wanted to do. She wanted to confront him. She wanted to see his face change. She wanted to hear him try to explain the hotel, the credit card charges, the payment, the lies. But she did not move, because confronting Paul too soon would only give him time. Time to delete. Time to transfer money. Time to change passwords. Time to call her unstable before she could prove she was right. So Linda chose silence. Not weak silence. Not frightened silence. Strategic silence. She folded the copied receipt into a plain envelope and placed it under a stack of insurance papers. Then she opened a notebook. On the first clean page, she wrote 3 lines. Hotel receipt. Joint credit card. County support processing. Paul thought he had come home to a wife who knew nothing. He had actually come home to a witness. And witnesses do not always speak right away. The next morning, Linda did something Paul never thought she would do. She did not call him at work. She did not send Vanessa a message. She did not post a sad quote online and wait for people to ask what happened. She did not scream into a pillow and then pretend everything was fine. Linda made an appointment with a divorce attorney. Her name was Elaine Porter. 58 years old. Gray hair cut short. Sharp glasses. A voice so calm it made panic feel out of place. Elaine's office was not decorated to comfort people. No candles. No soft music. No framed quotes about healing. Just files, clocks, legal pads, and the quiet understanding that by the time most people walk into a room like that, love has already turned into paperwork. Linda sat across from her with a folder in her lap. She had not slept much, but she had organized everything. That was Linda's instinct. When her heart was breaking, her hands still made order. Inside the folder were the hotel receipt, the credit card statements, bank records, screenshots of the recurring payments, and the notebook she had started keeping when Paul's excuses stopped lining up. She also brought Emily's school calendar. That one hurt in a different way. The hotel receipt proved betrayal. The calendar proved absence. And sometimes, absence leaves a deeper bruise than the affair itself. Because Paul had not just missed dinners with Linda, he had missed pieces of his daughter's life. Then he had called it work. Elaine opened the folder and started reading. She did not gasp. She did not say, "I'm so sorry," in that soft voice people use when they want sympathy to do the work. She just read. Good lawyers rarely look shocked. They have seen too many decent people sit across from them holding proof that someone else believed would stay hidden forever. After a few minutes, Elaine looked up. According to the rules in this state, what matters is not just the affair, she said. What matters is money, custody, honesty, and whether marital funds were used for something outside the marriage. Linda nodded. She had expected shame to hit her in that office. She thought she would feel foolish, humiliated, like a woman who should have known sooner. But instead, she mostly felt tired. There is a special kind of exhaustion that comes from finally being believed. It does not feel like relief at first. It feels like your body realizing it has been holding its breath for years. Elaine tapped the hotel receipt with one finger. "This is useful," she said, "but only if we keep everything clean." Then she gave Linda the rules. No hacking, no guessing passwords, no tracking apps, no fake profiles, no late-night messages to the other woman, no public revenge, no threats, no scenes. Nothing that could let Paul walk into court and make Linda's reaction look bigger than his betrayal. Every document had to come from somewhere clean. Accounts Linda had legal access to. Papers found in her own home. Joint financial records. Or information produced properly through discovery. Dirty evidence creates dirty problems, Elaine said. And Paul sounds like the kind of man who would love to make your reaction the issue. That sentence landed hard. Because it was exactly what Paul had been doing, turning her questions into flaws. Turning her pain into proof that she was unstable, turning his lies into her personality problem. For months, Paul had not needed to prove Linda was wrong. He only needed to make her sound difficult. Elaine closed the folder halfway and asked about custody. Linda looked down at Emily's calendar. "She's 16, Linda said. "She sees more than he thinks." Elaine did not push. She just wrote that down. That evening, Emily came into the kitchen and placed her phone on the table. She looked older than 16 in that moment. Not grown. Just tired in a way a child should not be tired. The kind of tired that comes from knowing too much and pretending not to. "I need to show you something," Emily said. Linda's first instinct was to stop her. Of course it was. A mother wants to protect her child from the mess, even when the child has already been standing in it for months. But Emily had that look in her eyes, the look of someone who had decided silence was no longer safe. So Linda sat down. Emily opened a note file on her phone. Dates, missed pickups, canceled dinners. Screenshots of texts from Paul saying he could not make it. Little promises he had broken so often they started to look like a pattern. Emily had not followed him. She had not done anything sneaky. She had not done anything wrong. She had only recorded what a daughter should never have to record. The times her father said he would be there, and the empty chair he left behind. Linda read the notes with one hand over her mouth. Emily watched her carefully, like she was afraid the truth might hurt her mother more than the lies already had. "Mom," she said, "I didn't want to hurt you. But I also don't want him to tell a judge he was always here for me. That changed everything. Because Paul's affair was one thing, ugly, selfish, cruel. But custody was something else. Custody was not about who was lonely. It was not about who felt betrayed. Custody was about a child. And Paul was already the kind of man who would use fatherhood as a financial strategy if it helped him. Within 2 weeks, Elaine filed the first requests for financial discovery. That was when Paul stopped sounding exhausted and started sounding afraid. Up until then, he could still act like this was a marriage problem, a misunderstanding, a wife overreacting, a private matter between two adults. But discovery has a way of removing romance from a lie. It asks for numbers, names, dates, statements, records. Paul had to produce bank statements, credit cards, bonus records, commission reports, retirement account information, business reimbursements, and anything tied to his side company. He hated that. Men like Paul love privacy when privacy protects them. They call it dignity. They call it stress. They call it none of your business. But in divorce court, money stops being private the moment it starts affecting a wife, a child, and a marital estate. The first crack came from a company Linda barely recognized. Whitaker Consulting Solutions. Paul had mentioned it once or twice like it was nothing. A small tax thing. A side project. A little consulting work. Nothing worth discussing. That was the tone he used whenever he wanted Linda to stop listening. But Elaine listened, and Elaine saw the pattern quickly. Some of Paul's bonus money was not landing where it should have. Some of it moved through the LLC. From there, it became consulting fees. And some of those fees went to Vanessa Reed. Not a random vendor, not a business contact, not a woman who just happened to need help. Vanessa. The name Linda had avoided saying out loud, because once you say the name, the affair stops being a shadow. It becomes a person. Someone with an address, a bank account, a phone number, a life standing on top of yours. Then Elaine found the second crack. County support processing, 14 months. More than $18,000. Daycare payments, medical co-pays, a recurring transfer with one memo line that made the room go very still. Knee read support. Elaine leaned back in her chair. That is not nothing, she said. Linda stared at the line until the letters started to blur. N. Reed. A child. A little boy. 3 years old, according to the daycare receipt. For a moment, Linda could not decide what hurt more. That Paul had another woman, or that he had quietly built another responsibility while acting like his own family was too expensive. He had complained about groceries. He had complained about Emily's braces. He had complained about the electric bill. And all that time, money from their joint life had been slipping into another one. Paul had not just been sleeping with another woman. He had been helping support another life with money from the marriage he was still pretending to respect. Elaine kept her voice careful. If Paul disputes paternity, or if he used that child to explain away money, DNA records may become relevant, she said. We do not chase scandal. We ask for documents. That was Elaine's way. No drama, no guessing, no dirty tricks. Just the slow tightening of a legal rope. Linda respected that. Part of her wanted a scene. Any honest person would. She wanted Paul embarrassed, cornered, small. She wanted him to feel even one piece of what he had made her carry. But Elaine kept bringing her back to what mattered. Evidence, procedure, custody, money. The truth, presented cleanly enough that Paul could not smear it. And Paul reacted exactly the way Elaine said he would. First, he denied. Then he minimized. Then he blamed Linda. He told mutual friends she was obsessed. He said she had become unstable. He said she was trying to destroy him because she could not handle a separation. That was the funny thing about Paul, in the bitter way. He had spent months building a second life, but somehow Linda was the one being dramatic for finding the door. Then Paul filed for 50-50 custody. Not because he had suddenly become the father Emily needed. Not because he had rearranged his life around school pickups, doctor appointments, homework, and ordinary Wednesday nights. No. 50-50 custody meant leverage. It meant a lower child support calculation. It meant a chance to stand in court and say Linda was keeping his daughter from him. It meant he could turn fatherhood into a negotiation. But Emily's calendar told a different story. 9 softball practices missed, 4 school meetings missed, 2 doctor appointments missed, 1 birthday dinner he promised he would never miss. That one stayed with Linda, because Paul had sent Emily a text that afternoon. "Front row tonight, kiddo. Wouldn't miss it." Then he missed it. The credit card placed him at a hotel restaurant less than an hour later. Dinner for 2, across town. When Elaine saw that, she did not smile. But her pen stopped moving for half a second. That was how Linda knew it mattered. "This is no longer about catching him cheating," Elaine said. "This is about proving the life he actually lived." So Linda kept living quietly for the next few weeks. She became 2 women. In the daytime, she was the same Linda everyone recognized. She went to work, bought groceries, drove Emily to school, answered Paul with short, calm sentences, washed towels, paid bills, made coffee. She did not perform heartbreak for him. She did not give him the satisfaction of knowing how much she knew. At night, she scanned documents, labeled files, sent records to Elaine, marked dates on the calendar, compared statements, saved copies, backed everything up. She did not feel powerful. That is the part people get wrong about patience. People think strategy feels like strength. Sometimes it does not. Sometimes strategy feels like sitting alone at a kitchen table, while the man upstairs thinks he is still smarter than you. Sometimes it feels like swallowing the sentence you want to scream. Sometimes it feels like letting a liar keep talking because every new lie gives you another record to match against the truth. Paul believed Linda had backed down. He even became warmer for a while. Not kind. Strategic. There is a difference. He brought home takeout, asked Emily about school, kissed Linda on the cheek like he was checking whether the old performance still had power. One evening, he looked at Linda over dinner and said, "See, this is better when you stop imagining things." Linda did not answer. She just looked at him, calm, still, and thought about the memo line. Knee. Read support. A week later, Paul said he had a late client meeting. Linda already knew he was lying. A bank alert had come through 30 minutes earlier. A hotel hold. Same side of town, same pattern. Same man who thought repetition was safety. At 12:17 a.m., his message arrived. "I'll be late. Don't wait up." Linda sat in bed and looked at it. This time, she did not feel panic. She did not feel that sharp drop in her stomach. Not like before. What she felt was quieter, colder. The feeling that comes when pain finally turns into evidence. She placed the phone beside her and waited. At 4:03 a.m., the second message came. "Something came up. We'll explain everything tomorrow." There it was. The mistake We, not I. Not work. Not the client. We. Paul had grown so comfortable inside his lie that he let another person step into the sentence. Linda held the phone in both hands. For a moment, she thought about the last 23 years. The small house, the cheap vacations, the empty chair beside her at Emily's performance, the birthday dinner he missed, the hotel receipt, the money. The little boy whose name had appeared in a memo line before Paul had ever had the decency to speak the truth. Then she typed the sentence that ended the marriage Paul thought he still controlled. Stay with her. You're single now. She did not add anything else. No paragraph, no begging, no insult, no question mark for Paul to dodge. Just one clean sentence. Then she turned the phone face down and sat in the dark. This time, the silence did not feel like fear. It felt like the last few seconds before a door closes. By morning, Paul came home looking like a man who had spent the last hour rehearsing innocence. His shirt was wrinkled. His face was pale. His wedding ring was still on, and somehow that made it worse. Some men will wear the symbol long after they have abandoned the promise. Linda was already sitting at the kitchen table. There was coffee in front of her that she had not touched, and beside it sat one plain envelope from Elaine Porter's office. Paul stopped when he saw it. For a second, he looked almost confused. Not because he did not know what he had done, because he had not expected Linda to be calm. He had expected tears, questions, maybe anger. Something he could grab and twist into proof that she was overreacting. Instead, she just sat there, quiet, dressed for the day, looking at him like a woman who had finally stepped outside the lie and locked the door behind her. Linda, he said carefully, you're being dramatic. There it was, the old move. Shrink the evidence. Mock the reaction. Make the woman defend her tone instead of the man defending his choices. Linda looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, your attorney can call mine. That was all. No speech, no trembling voice, no begging him to tell her why. Paul tried to laugh. It came out thin and dry. The kind of laugh a man gives when he is looking for the floor and cannot feel it under his shoes. Linda opened the envelope and placed the copies on the table. One by one, the hotel receipt, the credit card charges, the LLC document, the recurring support payments, the daycare receipt, the medical copay, and finally, the memo line. Nen, read support. Paul's face changed when he saw it. That was the first honest thing he had given Linda in months. Fear, not remorse, not shame. Fear. There are explanations, he said. Linda nodded once. I'm sure there are. He reached for the papers. Linda moved them back before his fingers touched them. Copies, she said. The originals are with Elaine. That made him angry. Not loud yet, but angry in the jaw, angry in the eyes. Because Paul could handle pain. He could handle tears. He could handle Linda asking what she had done wrong. What he could not handle was procedure. Procedure did not care if he sounded tired. Procedure did not care if he said Linda was difficult. Procedure did not care if he wanted one more private conversation where he could rearrange the truth. "You'll never get custody," he said. His voice had lost the softness now. "I'll tell them you're unstable." That was when Emily walked into the kitchen. She had heard enough. She was wearing an old sweatshirt. Her hair pulled back, her face flat in the way teenagers look when childhood has disappointed them one too many times. Paul turned toward her quickly. "Emily, this is between your mother and me." Emily looked at him. No tears. No shouting. Just a tired kind of disgust that cut deeper than anger. "No," she said. "It stopped being between you two when you kept missing my life." The room went still. Paul opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Emily stepped closer to the table. "If you tell a judge you were always there," she said, "then tell them why you missed my birthday dinner." Paul looked away first. That told Linda more than any confession could have. Because liars love arguments. They hate witnesses. And in that kitchen, Paul finally understood that Linda was not the only witness anymore. His daughter had been watching too. Not following. Not spying. Just living inside the same house he kept abandoning. That was the moment Linda knew the courtroom would not be about who could cry harder. It would not be about who sounded more wounded. It would be about who could prove the truth. And for the first time in a long time, the truth was not standing alone. The hearing came 3 weeks later. Paul arrived in a dark suit with a wounded expression, looking like a man prepared to be misunderstood. He had that polished sadness some people wear when they know an audience is watching. Not broken, managed. His attorney tried to frame the story carefully. Linda was emotional. Linda was suspicious. Linda had become controlling. Paul had made mistakes, sure, but he was a devoted father. A man under pressure. A man who only wanted equal time with his daughter. It sounded clean when his attorney said it. That is the danger of a good legal story. It can make selfishness sound like fairness if nobody brings receipts. Elaine did not open with the affair. That would have been too easy. Too emotional. Too expected. Instead, she opened with Emily's calendar. Dates first, then promises, then absences. She showed the court the nights Paul claimed to be working, while hotel charges placed him with Vanessa. She showed the missed school meetings, the missed doctor appointments, the softball practices he said he would try to attend, then forgot, as if his daughter's life was optional. Then Elaine showed the birthday dinner text. "Front row tonight, kiddo." Wouldn't miss it. Simple words. The kind a child believes because she wants to. Then came the restaurant charge from that same evening. Dinner for two, across town, less than an hour after he was supposed to be sitting in the front row. The judge read quietly. Paul shifted in his chair. Linda did not look at him. She looked at the table, at Elaine's notes, at the stack of documents that had become heavier than any speech she could have given. Then Elaine moved to money. The joint credit card, the hotel bills, the flower shop, the jewelry store, the recurring support payment, the LLC, the consulting fees, the daycare receipt, the medical copay, and that small, ugly memo line. "Read support," Paul said Vanessa was a friend in a difficult situation. He said it with the calm voice of a man trying to make theft sound generous. Elaine asked why a friend was receiving monthly support from marital funds. Paul said it was complicated. Elaine let the answer sit there. Silence can be a very expensive sound in court. Then she asked why the payments had not been disclosed. Paul had no clean answer. He looked at his attorney. His attorney looked at the documents, and Linda felt something shift. Not victory, not joy, just the quiet relief of watching the truth stand upright after being shoved down for so long. When the issue of paternity and DNA records came up, Paul's control slipped. He became defensive, then irritated, then careless. He said things too quickly. He corrected himself. He tried to make the child sound irrelevant and the money sound harmless, which only made both look worse. That was the problem with Paul. He could manage a lie in a kitchen. He could manage one over dinner. He could manage one in a text message. But he could not manage one under oath, with dates, records, and a judge listening to the pauses. The judge was not interested in romance. The judge did not care about heartbreak as entertainment. The court cared about money, disclosure, parenting, and whether Paul had used custody as a financial weapon. By the end of the hearing, the temporary orders were clear. Linda received primary physical custody. Paul received a structured visitation schedule. His child support would be calculated on his true income, including bonus money and LLC activity. The money spent on Vanessa would be reviewed in the property division. Additional financial records had to be produced. And Paul was warned not to keep calling Linda unstable without evidence. That part mattered to Linda more than she expected. Because for months, unstable had been the word Paul reached for whenever truth came too close. Now the word had nowhere to stand. Vanessa was not dragged into the street. Linda did not scream at her. She did not show up at her job. She did not turn the affair into a public performance. Vanessa was pulled into the only place that mattered. The paper trail. Subpoenas. Financial records. Payments. Proof. That was cleaner, colder, and much harder to escape. Paul did not lose everything in one dramatic moment. Real consequences rarely work that way. They do not arrive with thunder. They arrive in envelopes. Court orders, financial disclosures, recalculated support, custody schedules printed in black ink. Paul lost control, piece by piece. First the story, then the money, then the custody advantage, then the ability to make Linda look crazy for noticing what he had done. When they left the courthouse, Paul tried to speak to her in the hallway. "Linda," he said. She did not stop. She did not turn around for the version of him that wanted one more private conversation. One more chance to soften the edge. One more chance to make her feel responsible for the damage he caused. She only said, "Talk to Elaine," and kept walking. That was the kind of sentence Paul had never feared before. A quiet one. A final one. The kind backed by paperwork. A few months later, Linda and Emily moved into a smaller townhouse on the quiet side of town. It did not have the big backyard. It did not have the perfect living room. It did not look like the life Linda once tried so hard to protect. But it was peaceful. And peace, after years of guessing, can feel almost strange at first. The bills came in Linda's name. The calendar on the refrigerator was clear. Emily's school schedule was printed neatly. Paul's visitation days were marked in black. No more guessing. No more waiting by the window. No more listening for a car that might not come home. No more pretending that silence was normal. Slowly, Emily started laughing again. Not every day. Not all at once. Healing does not usually walk in and announce itself. It shows up quietly. In a joke at breakfast. In music playing from a bedroom. In a Saturday afternoon where a girl does not keep checking her phone to see if her father remembered her. Linda changed too. She stopped waking at midnight to check the clock. She stopped reading every quiet moment like it was a warning. She stopped mistaking peace for loneliness. Paul still sent messages sometimes. We could have handled this differently. That was one of his favorites. It was a sentence built for men who want the damage to sound mutual. Linda never answered the emotional part. She only replied with what mattered. Pickup times, school updates, doctor appointments, court-approved schedule changes. Nothing more. Because Paul had not lost Linda in one night. He had not lost her because of one text at 4:03 a.m. He had lost her every time he lied. Every time he used their money for another life. Every time he called her paranoid for noticing the truth. Every time he missed his daughter and called it work. Vanessa did not become the winner. Paul did not become the free man he had imagined. Their secret life started with hotel rooms, credit cards, careful lies, and another woman's child hidden behind vague payments. It ended with discovery, child support calculations, custody orders, and a judge reading the numbers Paul thought would stay buried. Linda did not destroy him. She only stopped protecting him. That is what cheaters rarely understand. They think betrayal breaks the person they betrayed, and maybe it does, for a while. Pain can knock a person down. It can make a woman sit on the edge of a bed at 4 a.m, staring at one careless word until her whole life splits in two. But pain is not always the end of the story. Sometimes pain becomes focus. Focus becomes paperwork. Paperwork becomes evidence. Evidence becomes freedom. And freedom does not always look loud. It does not always look like revenge. Sometimes freedom looks like a smaller home, a cleaner bank account, a calendar that finally tells the truth, a daughter laughing in the kitchen again, and one woman sleeping through the night because nobody is lying beside her anymore. If you want more stories about betrayal, divorce, custody battles, and quiet justice, subscribe and stay with us. The next story begins with one receipt, one lie, and a husband who thought his wife would never check the numbers.